Hello, everybody. Has any one of you noticed that this conference is actually about a bit more than just pure SEO? And that is intentional. And if you've been following our company for a longer while, you might know that we're all about holistic SEO. We have an holistic approach. We cover all the bases of website optimization because we believe that you need to do well in all these aspects to be found, to be able to be found. I think that is why we are able to attract to this SEO conference, as one of the few, people from the search industry. We've actually got Googlers and people from Bing over here, and I'm super, super proud about that. Because we are both interested in the open web, and we're both interested in reinforcing the open web and making it better for everyone. So, with that being said, I'm super excited to have here Alberto Medina and Joost de Valk. Alberto Medina, who's a developer advocate for Google Content Ecosystems team. And have them talk about the open web and how we can reinforce it and how we can make it more progressive. So please, help me welcome to the stage Joost de Valk and Alberto Medina.
We can do this. Good morning. We're very well coordinated.
Yes.
And we did actually practice this. Good morning. I'm going to assume you all know who I am by now. If you don't, well, I'm Marika's husband.
Yeah.
Alberto Medina. Who are you?
Yeah, I'm Alberto. I am, as Omar said, I'm a developer advocate and a team at Google that is called Content Ecosystems team. So we are part of Chrome, and we focus on everything that has to do with enabling or helping to enable the creation of awesome content experiences in the web. You know?
Awesome content experiences. That's your goal.
Yes.
Okay,
that's at the core of like, well, you know.
I like big, bold goals.
Yeah. But the underlying theme of that is like we actually want the open web to survive, to succeed, to thrive, and there is a strong correlation between content experience and user engagement. And it turns out that user engagement drives the economy of the internet, that is advertising. So you cannot have a successful platform if you don't have awesome content experiences. And the reality is that content experiences often are not great. Yeah.
I think we agree that content experiences can be improved, both on the front end and the content editing experiences can be improved. So your team is called, and I'm reading it out because Google is very good at creating very long team names, but this is CMS Developer Relations?
Yes. So, well, the team as a whole is called Content Ecosystems, and it has three main pillars, right? So one is content discovery, and that is very related to what you do. And you probably know Joe Mueller and Gary Eel. I don't know how to pronounce his last name ever, but they are part of the content discovery section. And then we have the content experience part that has two parts, AMP, that is Paul Backhouse and other people there. And then we have a new team that is called Content Management System Developer Relations that focuses on content experiences. But as you know, today 54% of sites in the web are powered by some form of content management system.
Yeah.
And WordPress is a big chunk of that. So it makes sense.
By far the biggest chunk.
Yeah. So. Historically, Google does a lot of work for the open web, but the content management system space is something like, they are there. So it's like, well, they are content management systems are also the open web, so we need to do this. So we focus on that part. And then we have the area of content performance that has to do with like providing primitives and tools for people to be able to see how the sites are performing in the wild.
So that's Lighthouse and all these other tools.
That includes taking advantage of leveraging the data that is produced by Lighthouse and page fitting sites and that kind of things. I don't know if you have heard about projects like HTTP Archive, that is like a data collection effort that is open source, and we contribute a lot with. And then there is a Rick Viscomi that works on trying to dig into that massive amount of data and try to see, well, this is the state of the web today. So to see how can we correlate what is you guys are doing and what we are doing in order to see how that tracks into improvements.
Cool. So we've slowly seen you pick up some people from the WordPress community. There's a couple of them here, actually. They're here in front.
Where are they?
Felix and Thierry.
Nice.
For those of you not aware, Google has been slowly hiring. How many do you have? 4 or 5?
Right now we have a team of 5.
5,
yeah, so
including you.
Yeah.
And the 4 other people are all, I think, WordPress committers or long-time WordPress developers.
Yeah. So
It's like really an investment that we've never seen before.
Yeah, that's important. So we started on this journey in like early 2017. And I was part of AMP developer relations in them. And how it worked out is like I was told, okay, Alberto, you want to try to make AMP in WordPress? Awesome. Sure. Sounds like easy. And then I started by myself, and it didn't take long to understand that was not the right problem to tackle. Actually, I quickly understood like what we need to tackle is actually making WordPress awesome in general. Right, making it more performant, more modern. There is a lot of things that happen in the standardization of new web APIs. How do we bring them to WordPress? So the project actually opened up like a universe of stuff, and I was actually new to the WordPress ecosystem, so I was fascinated by all the things that I was seeing. But we have zero expertise in WordPress. So one of the first things that we did is like, well, in order to succeed, we had to, okay, let's start working heavily right now. But we need to assemble a small but strong team so that we bring core engineering expertise to Google so that we can commit this for the long term. So we started that search that took a while. But now we have Thierry Mueller that is basically in charge of execution of everything that we do. Then we have Felix that was part of your team. We were super lucky.
So we lost someone to Google.
Yeah, I almost, broke the relationship, but it didn't happen. So. And then we have Weston Ruther that everybody knows, and then Pascal, and they are what is called in Google Developer Programs engineers that they are doing most of the development, but also they are working with me in the advocacy part. So we are 5 people that dedicated to this.
To me, it's very exciting to see you guys step in. The question I have mostly is, what took you so long? It's not like we've been here for 15 years. It's like...
Yeah. That's exactly what I asked. It's like, as soon as I was given this opportunity to get involved in this, I started looking at what happened. Like, why is like this has not been done before? It was like this treasure there, like exposed, and nobody took it. This is weird. And it turns out that Google actually has been trying to do this for a while. There were several attempts, but there were several pitfalls that we fell for. And the main one is that we failed to understand the WordPress ecosystem as a whole. Right? So the way that things were done is like, well, let's do it the Google way. So we have a problem, for example, I don't know, let's try to bring the AdSense product to WordPress in a way that is aligned with the AdSense product team. Like, oh, that sounds good. Okay, take 2 awesome WordPress Google engineers that have no clue about WordPress, and then develop a WordPress plugin because it's PHP. They can do it. They are strong engineers, but it turns out that that's not enough. Right? So we realized that, well, in order to succeed, well, they did that. They took the plugin and they throw it to the WordPress ecosystem, and the WordPress ecosystem throw it back. Nah. No, that's not the way to do that. The phrase, write WordPress with capital P, please. So it's like And that I realized quickly that actually Weston taught me that was a very offensive thing. So it's like,
yeah, you weren't always the best in the beginning, and you were, but the teams before you. I've seen it happen. To be fair, we've seen this happen with I think every big company out there that has tried to do. I mean, there's a Facebook plugin for WordPress that has been entirely abandoned for the last 2 years. There's a Twitter plugin for WordPress that has been entirely abandoned by Twitter. It's like these big companies step in and then go like, yeah, we've done it, right? It's done. And they were like, no,
exactly.
there's more to this.
That's a very important point because I realized that anything that I like to do myself, I have to love it. I think that so if we're going to succeed in WordPress, we need to work with people that love WordPress, that is like have it in their heart, no? And then bringing this team together is like they care about WordPress. It's not like they're going to say, okay, you're going to be working on Android. Nah.
No, so you're not going to drop the ball on this because as an SEO community, we've certainly seen Google create products and then drop them.
Well, yeah, it's like if the WordPress community doesn't want us, no, but if that doesn't happen, I think that we are here for the long term, and we have a very long-term vision. I think that our missions align very well. So I think that we have a lot of things that we can do together, and if we collaborate, we can succeed faster.
So
together.
What can we do together?
Everything, like content management systems are basically built on the open web, and Google can be many things, but we are very good at several key things, right? So we are very good at technologies, measurements, open technologies, web standards, and we can bring that expertise and that voice that we have in the web standards community to the WordPress. At the same time, WordPress is driving a third of the web. There is a lot of users creating and consuming content in the platform. And how do we bring that voice to the web standards to say, listen, it would be cool if we do this and you benefit a third of the web, and if a third of the web needs it, it's because it's something that is very useful. And we are starting to see that in projects like AMP, in which WordPress is actually influencing the AMP product team roadmap. Gutenberg has been a trigger for doing that. We can talk about that later, but we can collaborate on, I think the way that I'm seeing right now is that the WordPress community has been very focused on Gutenberg. You guys are focusing on everything that has to do with discovery, and you're doing awesome things with schema and the things that you announced yesterday. I think that I would like to be part of a triangle in which we contribute heavily on the performance part. Like, so how can we bring modern web APIs to the WordPress system, like, for example, service workers, or a new area of things that is called feature policies that is going to be giving control to the developers to achieve what AMP achieves sometimes. So it's like, how do you restrict what happens in your site when users sees it? So we could, actually, if we team up, we can actually be like a soccer team and play together,
So what most of you don't know, we've been talking about it for a bit, but not all that much, is that we are working together on trying to get XML sitemaps into WordPress core. It's been a feature of Yoast SEO for a long time, but we're trying to get them into WordPress core. That's a project that we still have to propose, and the entire WordPress community has to give their opinion about, etc. But it's something we think should happen, something you think should happen. Yeah. That kind of collaboration, is that something that we can expect more of between you and a lot of other companies?
Definitely. Or? Actually, the XML Sitemap project is a perfect example, right? So we all know that XML sitemaps are a good thing. It allows Google to quicker, or other search engines to quickly find out what is important in your site and crawl it and kind of things. And every site needs it. But I think that talking to you the other day, you mentioned 7 out of the 10 top plugins out there has some...
Four out of the top 10 installed plugins for WordPress currently provide XML sitemaps, yeah.
Exactly. So, and this is a general problem that we see in WordPress, is that there's a lot of fragmentation in the ecosystem. So for every technology that you want, there are 1,000 options out there. And
that's both good and bad, right?
It's good. It's good in general, but if you don't tie it with some kind of incentive mechanism for quality, then the problem is that users don't have a way to distinguish what is good, what is bad, and then you have fragmentation in quality, fragmentation in capabilities, and so on. So what we would like to see is like, well, why don't we unify the efforts and then bring sitemap, XML sitemaps to WordPress core so that we have a unified interface. So that same philosophy, you can bring it to service workers. Service workers, I'm sure that you know what it is, but basically it's like a client-side proxy that allows you to intercept all the browser requests to the web, and then you can manipulate what you do. You can say, well, the browser is issuing a fetch. The service worker intercepted, and I can serve something from cache, or I can manipulate the answers, and so on. That you can do definitely that right now in WordPress. And there are several, I don't know if many is the word, but there are several plugins that provide some kind of implementation of service workers. The problem is that you cannot have two service workers installed for the same scope, for the same part of your site. If you do that, there is a collision, and then your site is not going to work as you expect. If you have multiple plugins doing that, again, what if we take the service worker API and we bring it to WordPress core, and we already have a TWA plugin, a feature plugin that we are working on, and we are proposing to see if we can merge it to core. So this is another example. Then we have feature policy. There are so many things that we can do that.
There's a lot happening in web standards as a whole. It's funny. It ties a bit into what Wolfgang was talking about yesterday, that whereas the SEO community, in talking to policymakers, in a similar way, we as the WordPress community are not really talking to the web standards community all that much. A lot of these colleagues of yours that we've seen at WordCamp Europe, et cetera, are the people that are making these new web standards. So it's very exciting to see and interact with them and to actually, take it right from the start and build it from the beginning.
Yeah, so Ilya Grigorik, for example, that is the leader of the content ecosystem team as a whole, he has been deeply involved in things like HTTPS, everything that has to do with performance. He has been there, feature policy has been there. So he has a lot of expertise and deep involvement in this kind of project. He's a big voice, and he's very interested also in bringing that to this area, and also to learning how can we bring things from this part of the world to that, so we can enhance what happens in the web standards community.
So something else that I'd like to talk about, at WordCamp US you announced this Google Sitekit plugin, which immediately everyone came asking us about, because isn't that competing with Yoast SEO?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, we are. No, actually, the goal of that project is that there are several things that a site needs to have as a baseline in order to succeed, right? So you need to have insights to know how are you doing, from content quality to indexability, all the things that you talked yesterday. You need to monetize your site, otherwise you cannot survive, and that kind of things. And we talk about the fragmentation problem. Interestingly, when you ask me why did it take so long for Google to get involved with the WordPress, well, we realized that there are not any Google products made by Google in the WordPress ecosystem. That's crazy, right? So if you want Google Analytics, there you have 200 plugins out there, none by Google. You want Search Console, well, thank God you took that on you, because otherwise there was a lot of variability and so on. So we said, what if we provide just a baseline capabilities of essential Google products that could allow anybody to succeed in the web, right? So any content creator or publisher, so that they have in one place Analytics, AdSense, Search Console, and PageSpeed insights. So you can have performance, monetization, how the site is performing in the wild, and how your site is being performing on search.
But even from the inside of Google, and most people don't realize, but Google is, most people realize it's huge, but they don't always realize how little teams talk to each other within Google. So even from the inside of Google, it seems like a major project to get all those people to talk to each other.
Yeah, that has been challenging, and that's, Tilly can talk about that, and Felix also very involved with that. It's very challenging. Maria is another person that is doing product management for that project. But actually, that's a very important point that you touched, right? Because people think that Google is Google. It's like Google. Actually, we are a team at Google. We have an agenda. So we see ourselves as a startup inside Google. So we have a vision. We are aligned with Google goals that Google is a web company, so we depend on a successful web, right? That's a fact. So we are not a charity, we are not a non-for-profit, but you also need an open web that is successful. So when you think about the work that we do, try to separate it from like, well, is Google evil? Maybe, right? But the work.
But your team is not. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. it's like I think that it's important for everybody to question and scrutinize corporations, right? Like we saw in some of the talks yesterday. Yeah, when corporations grow big, then it's natural to think like, well, are they capitalism, as we heard the word. I am like a socialist, so like I agree with those views, but at the same time, it's like, well, being in the position that Google is actually gives you a lot of power to do good. So if you use that power well, then you are golden, right? So that's what we are trying to exploit. And if the day comes in which we are faced with the decision of like between doing what we believe is correct versus doing evil, I don't know, I cannot speak for everybody, but I'm sure that I will step up and say, listen, I cannot do, this is not correct. And we saw several examples that I could discuss yesterday that actually is not an evil motive behind them, but it's difficult to understand them when you don't understand what's happening at the product.
And I think nobody thinks they're evil, or nobody, but most people don't. Let's go back to AMP, because in this light, it's very funny. I think a lot of people in the SEO community see AMP as something evil. I certainly was very skeptical in the beginning on what is this? Why do we need to make the web uglier to make it faster? Because that's what it felt like in the beginning. Yeah. But it's looking to go a slightly different route now, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, AMP definitely has had a good deal of interactions in the community, both positive and some negative. Some of the negative criticism or the skepticism is well-founded. Like, for example, the project started, and then in order to serve, first let's define what AMP is, right? For like just to like set AMP is in essence just a web components library built completely on top of web technologies, HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And also it has a runtime system that provides a lot of capabilities, like, for example, like a static layout system, so that AMP always knows where things are. So, and that gives it a lot of advantage in order to be able to render things fast and not do these content systems and things like that. And also has a validation framework that allows you to get to the fast lane, and when you are in the fast lane, stay in the fast lane, which is super hard, right? Because I finished my website, tomorrow the performance tanked. They say, what happened? Oh, you installed that plugin that has this JavaScript, that has this synchronous image loading, and that is bad. AMP prevents that from happening. And what AMP does then with this component is it brings out of the box a set of functionality and capabilities that are essential to achieve our initial goal, that is awesome content experiences. Now, when AMP started, we were faced like, the open web was in a bad shape. There was a moment in which actually seriously people were thinking that the open web was going to die. There were studies showing that users spend something like 83% of the time in native apps versus the web. And it was like, Jesus Christ. Now, we saw yesterday some data that now also things like Facebook, for example, they were drivers of traffic before, and now they are a traffic sink, right? People go to Facebook, and that's the internet. For them, there are countries in which there is no internet, it's just Facebook. Or there are places in which everything happens in a chat app. So it was a very scary time, and not only that, the experiences that were built in the web sucked. So they were very, very slow, very big, very sluggish, and it's like, we are faced with that situation and we say, well, what do we do? The technologies are there, the web has evolved a lot, but it's not happening. So we wait until it happens, or we do something now. AMP is a response to the approach that we need to do something right now. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to do anything later. At the beginning, AMP was very limited, and it has issues, for example, like when there is a component of the AMP ecosystem that is the AMP cache that allows you, when you serve content from the AMP cache, to load it near instantly, because when you combine the AMP cache with the static layout system, you can do things like pre-rendering, so that when the user loads the page, it feels like near instant, not because it loaded near instantly, but because there was some pre-rendering, privacy-preserving pre-rendering that took place, and so on. The problem is that when you save pages from the AMP cache, then the URL is not your URL, and people scream, foul, hey, you are stealing our content. That is not a good thing, and we always agreed, right, that it was the only way that we had to do that, given the technology of the time. Think about 2015. Now that problem is going away with the advent of web packaging that is going to allow publishers to create content, sign it, and then a third-party provider can serve your URL from their origin as it was you, because you signed it. So it's like called HTTP sign exchanges. So that problem is going to go away. And the other issue is that AMP said, well, what is the problem? Why performance is so damn hard? It's because you have to do many things. You have to say, well, make sure that you load your images asynchronously, or you do lazy loading.
You have to fix 1,000 things to get
exactly. You have to perform a budget, and then be careful with what you install in your site, and so on and so on and so on. So what AMP says, like, well, what if we restrict the kind of things that you can do, and allow you to do only the things that, or which almost everything that you can do to get an awesome experience. So AMP restricts certain HTML tags you cannot use, like image tags, is replaced by the AMP image tag. And also, but because AMP is a web components library, it provides you tags that don't exist. So but people were thinking like, yeah, but you are then changing, it's a parallel web. No, it's not. It's a web components library. So that misunderstanding created a lot of problems.
Yeah. But so you mentioned briefly, and I think that's actually very cool, because I hadn't heard about it before, but you're splitting up AMP basically a bit, or you're turning it into a framework.
Yeah.
That, if I understand you correctly, that means that we will be able to use parts of AMP in our web pages without using the entire AMP runtime?
Yes. Yeah. So the AMP project as a whole right now has evolved significantly. I like to see AMP like as a Turing machine kind of framework. What it basically means that you can do everything with AMP. Sometimes you have to think out of the box to see how you can do it in terms of the capabilities that AMP provides. So right now the project is in stabilization mode, adding little things here and there, improving things that exist. One of the actually things that was elicited by working on enabling AMP content experiences in WordPress the WordPress way, which means that we wanted to use, Gutenberg, right? So like there is the cool thing about Gutenberg is that it's all about blocks, and AMP is an AMP components library, so there is a direct mapping between Gutenberg blocks and AMP components, so it's this kind of synergy that is very good. But it's very difficult, or you cannot do, in many cases, to re-render a Gutenberg block independent of the whole AMP page. And in Gutenberg, we want to do previewing. So we cannot do previewing for certain AMP components, because then the runtime would have to restart. So that request, actually, we talked to the AMP team and said, listen, this is a blocker for AMP in WordPress. So right now, it's an aggressive effort by the AMP team, P0 for WordPress, of enabling the use of AMP components outside of an AMP page. So you can have an AMP image, for example, that allows you to do lazy loading automatically without having to have the full AMP page. And the way that's going to work is that you're going to have like a piece of the runtime in that web component only. And so that's something that's going to happen this year.
I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah. I think it's a very good example of Google changing things because the open web needs it.
Exactly.
And the other way around, also the Google helping the open web to do better.
Yeah.
It's funny, one of the things we always say, Jono has been working aggressively on making Yoast.com faster. And with AMP, we couldn't make Yoast.com as fast as without AMP because there were certain restrictions that we had on the AMP library. And with this, we could actually probably make our site even faster by using small parts of AMP, the parts that we think are really cool, and then not using the parts that were blocking our speed.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And if we could have started that way from the beginning, people would have not way to complain, right? Because it's like, but what we want now is to say, well, what if AMP is just another framework. And what I am envisioning is that people is going to choose AMP just because it makes sense. Like, it's like, wow, I have a framework here that gives me all this high performance, all these high capabilities, without me having to do anything. And I have in WordPress, for example, the AMP plugin that helps me to make it happen. Why I would not use it, right? I can go and do it myself, and do it myself forever, but it's going to make a business
It's a lot of work. So
work.
if you make it easier, that's awesome. And if we can make it easier in a way that it isn't hindering us.
Exactly.
I keep enabling and then disabling the AMP plugin because it breaks stuff for me, and then I want it to work, so I yell at Cherry and the others and
it's their fault.
No, yeah, they're working hard, I know.
Yeah. Actually, probably we can talk about that later, but AMP in WordPress makes a lot of sense because of how, one of the biggest strengths of the WordPress ecosystem or the WordPress platform in general is that you can do whatever you want, literally. Like anything, Weston has this thing, like anything that you tell him to do, he can make it happen in a WordPress plugin. That's a virtue of the platform, right? It's flexibility, it's power. Yeah. However, it's also the course of the platform.
Yes.
Because then you can do everything you want, right? It's like an all-you-can-eat restaurant. The problem is that you can eat all you can, and then that is sometimes not good. So AMP is actually provides rails, like, okay, so you can do whatever you want, but don't do that. Don't eat that donut with bacon in it. And
so are you now claiming that AMP is a life coach?
Actually, I was thinking that I would like to work for Global, actually.
Okay. We could talk for hours, but it's probably better if we just open up the floor to Q&A and then I heckle you a bit in the meantime, because of course Google is evil.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention one more thing before we discuss the evilness of Google, is that is something that I want you to all think is like, one of the challenges that I see in the web a lot is that the web is powerful today. It has evolved a lot. If you think about what has happened since 2010 till now, you can do anything. You can use the gyroscope. You can use, you can shake the phone and do things. You can do a lot of the things that you do in native apps. You can do it in the web. However, only a tiny fraction of those capabilities are used. So what is happening is what we call the capabilities usage gap. It's the difference between what you can do in the web and what actually people are doing in the web, right? So it's very big. And at the beginning, it was this small because there was only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Fine, so people went up. Now it's like this big. And one of the challenges is that if you cannot exploit the capabilities of the web, then we are going to be behind forever, right? Because the native app is very easy to use the gyroscope. You have an API and a language that allows you to do. So we need to close that gap as much as you can to make the web succeed. But one of the most important things that I think is we need to close that gap is what we call the Matthew effect of accumulated advantage. That is an economic term that just says that given that complexity, it seems that only organizations like Global are able to take advantage of the web. Why? Because they have 15,000 engineers. They have pile of money. They have the ability to hire 5 engineers that are super strong. What about all the companies that have 1 developer and they cannot do it? So if we don't close that gap, what we are saying is like, yeah, I want to take advantage of my power, and you are not going to be able to do content experiences like the one that I can do because I have 15,000 engineers. I am against that. I don't think that that's what the web is about. So projects like AMP, projects like bringing modern web APIs to WordPress, is all about closing that gap so everybody can get those content experiences. So, yeah.
He's doing a very good job of making it not sound evil, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna get a peer bonus.
Let's pass the block around a bit for some questions. We'll start here.
So you were talking about the usage gap. I know that in the past, Gmail has done a lot for getting AJAX requests popular. That was like the first app that people saw, oh, it's using AJAX requests, and that's really cool. Apart from AMP, do you have any plans, or do you know of plans that to make like a killer app that everyone is inspired by, like, oh, that's why I want to use service workers or web workers or whatever in my own apps?
Yeah. The way that I see it actually is we want to provide the building blocks, like the components. A service worker is a enabling component for you to create features that you want for your app. And we are actually facing that in the development of the service worker integration with WordPress. We call it the PWA plugin. Is that we cannot provide the specific features because anybody can do different things. For example, I would like to have, if I am a blogger, I would like to have a read for later capability that people can just say, I want to read this article later, and the service worker caches it. And then when I'm on the train, I can read the articles that I saved. You know, YouTube has that capability. It's super awesome. But we want to provide the building blocks, so if you want that feature, you can do it easily. Google has like, I don't know, a zillion product teams that probably they are building the next killer app right now. But for me, it's just like you're enabling you to do it.
Can you throw it to the back, Anton?
Thank you. I do have two questions. One
that is very bad. Start with one.
One is for the accelerated mobile pages. So there are a lot of companies investing a lot of money in UX design.
UX?
UX design, yes. Like, just move this button 2 pixels, right, down, up, a lot of other stuff. But by enabling AMP pages, like, most of the look and feel is about the same on all pages. Is the rendering going to be changed soon? So the AMP page will render the exact design that I have invested a lot of money for the user experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to promote your version 1 of AMP,
Exactly.
AMP plugin a lot.
Yeah. Actually, that's a part of the criticism that AMP has suffered is because at the beginning, AMP was very restricted, right? So there were like...
It was ugly.
Well, it was not ugly itself, but it was like you could not do many things in AMP that you could do in your open web. So in order to drive adoption and to get people to use this, what we decided to do was like, well, why don't we create this pair mode, right? So in which you can have one version of your site that is AMP and one version of your site that is non-AMP, the canonical site. And then in WordPress, for example, the plugin that we took over was pioneered by Automatic, and they did something very simple that worked, right? So I don't want people to deal with building the AMP page. We want to create a simple template with a blue bar, and we're going to put the content, and voila, you have an AMP page. But then what you said happened, right? All the AMP pages look the same, and it's like, that's another. Google is evil, that you are taking my brand and obliterating it. And yes, right? So the reason why I joined the project was like, yeah, we need to solve that. If you do AMP in WordPress today, you can actually leverage your full theme and have the pair mode, so-called pair mode that was needed at the beginning. Now you can have it identical to your site, which means that you don't need the pair mode. So we added a additional mode that we call it the native AMP mode, in which you have only one version of your site, and it's basically AMP canonical. So all our blogs are AMP canonical, and we are right now, we released the AMP plugin 1.0 in December in WordCamp US, and right now it's the adoption phase. So you're going to see more and more full AMP sites that are actually fully branded, everything identical.
The second question, it's about global.
Yeah, we are teaming up with them. Actually,
and
we are going to acquire them, actually.
I have seen Google lately approaching too much to WordPress.
Yeah.
Is it going to bite soon?
Yeah.
Let me. So I have a bit of a double agenda sometimes, as I am too involved with WordPress. WordPress is not something anyone can buy.
Automatic.
That's not WordPress.
That's WordPress.
And that's so WordPress.
That's 90% of WordPress.
No, and that is literally not what it is. I mean, it's open source, and WordPress is a lot of companies. It's Yoast, it's Google, it's Automatic, and of course Automatic is a very large company within that and did a lot of work in that. But whatever he's going to say, regardless of that, nobody can buy WordPress. Yeah. WordPress is here to stay. It's open, and it will stay, and it will be around. Yeah. And nobody's going to.
Actually, arguably, if we bought Automatic, we would actually get Matt Mullenbeck, right? He's the benevolent dictator. So we say, okay, now you go and make them use AMP. However, remember that our goal is for having an open, flourishing, vibrant open web. It actually is negative for us to buy Automatic, right? We are shooting ourselves in the foot if we take one of the main actors in that ecosystem and then swallow it, right? Because it's counterproductive.
So what he's telling you basically is that we can't sell to Google.
Exactly. Imagine that we buy Yoast, then it's like, then all this is gone. And that would be a tragic thing. So we will actually be detrimental to our goals. So the answer is like our only interest, and the reason why part of the heavy involvement that you're seeing in WordPress for the last 2 years has been me that's saying like, let's do it. And now with the team that actually is so involved in WordPress, it's natural we want to be part of this ecosystem. I want people to see Google as like, yeah, Google, WordPress, they work together. That is like, it's the same thing.
I like your quote that I think you gave it 1.5 years ago or something, but I thought that was very strong. And please tell me if I'm quoting you wrong, but where you said that it's more useful for you guys to help improve WordPress and make that the example for other systems and CMSs out there.
Exactly.
Than do a whole lot of other things. So keep the skepticism, because I think the skepticism is very good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's definitely, that's a very important factor. So we cannot do what we are doing at the same scale with all CMSs, right? So I'm not going to hire 5 people to work on Drupal, 5 people to work. No, we can't, right? But it happened to be that if you do things in WordPress in a way that WordPress succeeds, it's going to shed a lot of light on the whole CMS space. That people are going to say, oh, they do it like this. Probably we can take the AMP plugin. Something that we are working right now, for example, is taking the AMP plugin and decompose it into modules that probably the CSS tree shaker, which is a very essential component of the AMP plugin to help you deal with the CSS limitations in size that AMP provides, probably could be then imported as a module in an AMP Drupal plugin or in any PHP base. And what if we ported that to JavaScript? And then now we have Ghost to be used to that, something like that. So there is a lot of things that actually the WordPress community, by working with us, we can influence the whole thing.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'm going to thank you for being so open.
Yeah.
And for not being.
But you didn't ask me, like, is Google evil?
Well, let's that be the last question of the day. Is Google evil?
Yes. No. Thank you.